Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining bright and early on a Monday morning on the West Coast with so many challenges happening in our world. I really appreciate everybody who's taking the time out to join us today. And this is the Me2B 101, an ethical foundation for respectful technology webinar. And if you've come to learn about the Me2B Alliance, I'm afraid you're going to be a little bit disappointed because we're not going to go into much detail about the goings on of the Me2B Alliance. We're really focusing on the ethical foundation and principles underlying the measurement of technology that we're performing in the Me2B Alliance. So without any further delays, I'm going to get started. This is the agenda for today. We have a long agenda, a brief introduction. We're going to dig into this acronym Me2B and where it came from and what it means. We're going to look at Me2B as an ethical foundation and what that means. And then we're going to look at the application of this acronym with a couple of concepts like the Me2B relationship concept, the Me2B deal concept, and Me2B tools. So a lot to get through. So here's my first profound thought of the day. The internet has changed everything. And I know we know this, but sometimes it's good to kind of pause and take stock of just how much the internet has changed everything, truly everything, how we work, how we play, and how we live, really. And we're definitely feeling that this year, I believe. And we live in the physical world. There are things that we do in the physical world we can only do in the physical world, using our bodies, sleeping, eating, enjoying our loved ones. We live in the physical world. That is kind of where the richness is in our lives. But we also live in the digital world, and increasingly so. And that world is becoming more rich as well. I think we're all experiencing that this year during this pandemic situation. And we're increasingly relying on digital media and digital tools to really perform much more parts of our lives than we did in the past. The problem is we don't really have the right vocabulary to describe our digital lives. We don't really have the words to give things names about what's actually happening. And it's hurting us. So here's an example of a way that it's hurting us. Data is the new oil. We have all seen the sentiment. And if you really embrace this as an ideology, this can take us to very hurtful, difficult places. And so this is an example of how we don't really know how to talk about this digital world that has been created and that has emerged, really. And the architects of this digital world, what didn't happen is they didn't reproduce or ensure the same social norms that we enjoy in the physical world. And I think it's mainly because they weren't reckoning how much of a world they were building. That is, they weren't aware that they were building a world and what duties might be incumbent upon the deigning to build a digital world. Instead, they built this amazing, very resilient, very robust plumbing from which a digital world has emerged. Unfortunately, we didn't bring the social norms and behaviors in Oh, what is going on? Can you hear me? Yay, I'm back. All right, folks, I'm so sorry. I have no idea what's going on. It would, the technology gods are not with me. Ping me again if it goes out. Sorry, folks, we're going to resume. So I'm not sure if you heard this, but the flow of the point here is that the original architects of the digital world didn't bring in the social norms that we enjoy in the physical world. And as a result, what has emerged is a global business model of surveillance capitalism. And this is a term popularized by Shoshana Zuboff. And fundamentally, what it means is the monetization of data. And this has become the de facto standard of really all businesses that have a presence on the internet, which is virtually all businesses. And initially, analyzing data, using data was not evil, right? It was not a bad thing. We used it for service improvement. And this is from Shoshana's book, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism. And originally, technology observed behavior to make the experience better. It was a altruistic kind of endeavor, but it quickly became a business model where they started using the surplus of measured or observed behavior and started to monetize it for these newfangled internet businesses, back in the early part of the century, like Google. And it quickly became the de facto standard. And there are a lot of problems with surveillance capitalism, and Shoshana's book is excellent. I highly recommend it if you're interested in sort of an encyclopedic accounting of all the problems. But I want to highlight on a few. First of all, there's an irresistible allure of surveillance capitalism, of lazy marketing and easy money. Lazy marketing because instead of knowing your customers, you're spying on and observing them and thinking you know them. And it's easy money because you're monetizing this digital exhaust, this behavioral low-hanging fruit of just observing. Problem is this completely destroys personal privacy. And the fact of the matter is we wouldn't tolerate this kind of behavior in the physical world. And yet it's completely rampant. Like you wouldn't tolerate having to create an account to buy a loaf of bread. You wouldn't tolerate being actively surveilled as you walk through the grocery store to buy a single item. But we do in the digital world. Surveillance capitalism also deliberately exploits what we used to call customers, right? We used to be customers. Now we're actually part of production. We are the raw material of production. The model has totally changed. So what we're dealing with here essentially is a highly asymmetrical, dysfunctional B2C, going back to the sort of traditional B2C language, a B2C relationship. It's a broken B2C relationship. We need something else. So what if we start thinking about Me2B? Okay, so first looking back a little bit, who coined this term? Well, it seems there was something in the air around 2014 because this term came up in 3 separate continents, really. Control Shift in the UK, MeetGo in Australia. Oh, geez. Did it go again? Oh. Oh, yeah, hang on. And we're getting this all on the video. That's awesome. Okay. Why is it not sharing? Okay. Okay, folks, I'm so sorry for these technical problems. Yeah, Guy, if you could just text me, that would be great. I have my phone right here, and then I can get it right away. So I don't think you miss much. You miss mostly word slides. I'm going to go back over here. You probably missed some good pictures on surveillance capitalism. So I'm just going to whip through these real quick. So this was when observing behavior was okay, and this is when it was not. And these are both from Shoshana's book. And the rest were just word slides. So catching you up to here, we're at looking back at who coined this term. So it came into real fullness in around 2014. And so what is it? It's an adjective. It's a qualifier. It qualifies other words. And it is a deliberate response to the asymmetry of the B2C relationship. It's an indication, because of the order of this, me to be, it's an indication that I'm in charge. And this builds a little bit off of the customers always right paradigm. These are customer relationships. These are businesses that are at the service of the me. So the ethos that we're exploring here really does lean towards the me. And this acronym represents the relationship that I have with any institution. And the two is a little bit misleading because it makes it seem like it's a one-way relationship. It isn't. This is a completely two-way relationship, as all relationships are. There's give and take. There's two-way transactions. And so traditionally, this relationship, we understood it as being a customer of. And we talked about the problems of what surveillance capitalism has done to that. But importantly, we were not contemplating, as we've been using this, we weren't contemplating the employee of or citizen of relationships. But the rules that we're going to present, the ethos that we're presenting here, can really apply universally, I think. And it is an ethos, first and foremost, or in its grandest sort of embodiment, it is an ethos. It's an ethical way of looking at things. And the core belief behind this ethos is that respectful, more balanced me-to-be relationships aren't just better for me's and correcting that dysfunction and that asymmetry that exists today, but it's better for be's as well. And well, what does better mean? So really, we're interested in the well-being of me's and be's. And so the core thesis here is that mutual respect, a more balanced relationship will be better and foster well-being for me's and be's. And there's a lot of groups in the world that are working on ways to improve this imbalance. There's a lot of groups that align with the me-to-be ethos. This is just a little sampling of them. In fact, there are hundreds. We've developed a Good Tech Wiki that tries to track these things. It's a little rough around the edges. We're still working on improving it, but there's over hundreds of these around the world that are in some way or another trying to improve the state of this dysfunctional relationship. So how do we use me-to-be? When we use it, it's really implying idealized me-to-be principles. So in this discussion today, we're going to talk about the me-to-be deal and the me-to-be relationship. To a large degree, we're talking about the idealized version of those relationships, of those terms. So the idealized me-to-be deal, the idealized me-to-be relationship. It implies something aspirational and also achievable. Anyone can use this term. It's not a trademark term. And in fact, please do use it if it feels right to you, if it makes sense to you. So I want to go a little bit deeper into me-to-be as an ethical foundation. When we first started our work in the Me2B Alliance, what we were doing in the Me2B Alliance is we were measuring the ethical behavior of technology. And so we needed to have a kind of ground zero, a sort of kind of quasi-universal ethic that, a North Star, if you will, that would serve us in producing our certification criteria and our testing criteria. As we looked at a lot of things, including the things listed on this slide. So the whole ethos is informed by human rights in general, and in particular, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights from the UN, Article 12. And also, And also, it has also been informed by consumer rights, sort of writ large, and what consumer rights are. It's been informed by moral foundations theory, and all of these references will be available in the deck after the webinar. It's also been informed by communication privacy management theory. And to no small degree, we've taken a long, hard look at how we are in the physical world. And we're really interested in taking those social norms of how we behave in the physical world and applying those in the digital world. And if we look at the core beliefs restated somewhat differently, we have healthy me-to-be relationships are better for both me's and be's. Excuse me, I have to turn this off. So, if we take a note from psychology on the characteristics of healthy human relationships, I think, by the way, the reason I'm having this is there's stuff in the air from all the fires we're getting a little bit here, and apologies for the for the disruption. So healthy human relationships are better for both me's and be's. So if we take a note from the psychology of human relationships, and if we look at the attributes of healthy human relationships, what can we learn there? And this is exactly what we did, is we took a long, hard look at what constitutes healthy human relationships. And so what we did is we took a list of these attributes for healthy human relationship, and we've assembled this me-to-be rules of engagement. And these are largely things that we know, right? They're fairly intuitive. We agree not to coerce or manipulate each other. We agree to respect each other's personal boundaries, including respectful defaults. In the absence of stated preferences, we default to the most conservative behavior. This is what we do in real life. When you meet someone for the first time, you have respectful defaults. You don't start spouting your most private, innermost thoughts, right? There are things that we do, and that these behaviors that we need analogs for in the digital world. We agree to treat each other fairly and not exploit things that are shared. We agree to be forthright, honest, and clear in our communication. We agree to not willfully harm one another. We agree to mutual accountability, respectful, collaborative, and fair problem solving. When disagreements arise, we agree to have a respectful way to resolve those things. So what we're really interested in is applying these things, these principles, these rules of engagement, to businesses and technology. And if we just add a dash of consumer rights sensibilities to this, we have distilled this down to 3 core principles. The first one is I'm in charge. I'm in charge of the relationship, the me-to-be relationship. I'm in charge of, because again, this comes from consumer rights. These are companies that are servicing us, that we are choosing to interact with and be customers of. We are in charge of the information about me. We agree to play nice by the rules of engagement. And we agree that no information, you can't have any information about me without a me-to-be relationship. So this sort of feels like you shouldn't have to say this, but we do, right? Because there's an entire industry of data brokers that are compiling all kinds of information and profiles about us without our awareness. We have no relationship with those companies, and we don't even really know it's happening. So in short, these me-to-be core principles are about respectful businesses, respectful products, respectful technology that treat people right. And just a quick footnote on this. It's not just me. This isn't really, we're not aspiring in some kind of individualistic kind of ethos here. We recognize our independence. We recognize the web of well-being, and that we are interrelated, and that healthy societies need respectful relationships at all levels, including, by the way, a planetary level. So the ethos really kind of has a bit of ripple effect and broader scope, more than what this me-to-be acronym may imply. Okay, so we're going to get into the me-to-be relationship now. What do we mean when we say a me-to-be relationship? Well, it's complicated. It's complicated because the internet has changed everything. So for example, here's a little image of a messaging folder on a phone, and one might say, okay, how many bees are in this picture? Who's the bee? Well, how many bees are in this picture? The answer is less than 5. And that is not intuitive, right? The obvious answer might be, well, there's five apps there. There must be 5 businesses. No, that's not the case at all. The bee is the legal entity that built the thing. It's the legal entity that built the thing you're using. What's the nature of my relationship with a bee? So let's look at that both in the physical world and the digital world. So in the physical world, and I'm largely thinking about also non-digital products, and that'll become clear why. But if we look at our relationship with businesses in the physical world, there's a geographical element to it. There's a sense of near and far when I go to a retailer, when I go to a restaurant, when I go to something that I have a very near, intimate sort of local experience of it. The geography is immediate. When I buy something from North Face, for example, from REI, I'm recognizing that I'm not in the North Face store. I'm in the REI store. And so I have a sense that that manufacturer is far away from the experience I'm having right now. But I get that. It makes sense to me. I sort of intuitively can figure that out. In the physical world, I have a very high level of autonomy and agency. And that is, I vote with my feet, right? I patronize or I don't patronize. And my loyalty is uncoerced and it is offered freely for things that I really like. In the physical world also, the legal burden is proportional to the magnitude of the transaction. So, for instance, when I buy a house, there's a much bigger sort of legal overlay to that transaction. When I buy a loaf of bread, there isn't. It's proportional. And finally, we have a pretty long tradition of human customer care, especially when you're in a retailer or a restaurant or a theater in a, kind of a local place you're having a local experience with. You can talk to people in the store. They're agents of the brand that you're in, right? And yes, the phone trees are miserable and that is changing our experience of customer care. But there's generally a tradition of getting to a human in the physical world. So now let's contrast that with what's happening with our Me2B relationship in the digital world. So first of all, we have what I'm calling paradoxical geography. There's an utter absence of space, right? In the digital world. There's no measurement or reflection of space. So I'm having this strange kind of simultaneously near and far experience where I'm interacting with an app and, the company isn't a little man behind my screen typing back to me, right? But it feels like I'm having kind of a very intimate proximal relationship with this thing that I'm using. But at the same time, I know that the company is far away, very far away, maybe on the other side of the world. So there's a strange paradox here of sort of near and far. I'm experiencing near and far simultaneously. There's a radical reduction in autonomy and agency in the internet. I am forced into relationships, whether I want them or not. I'm surveilled, as we discussed. And there's a very large do-it-yourself privacy burden. And it's nowhere near as intuitive as the physical world. Meaning, in the physical world, I manage my privacy by, as Doc Searle says, wearing clothes. By, kind of not drawing attention to myself if I don't want to draw attention to myself. We have intuitive ways to manage our sense of privacy. I go home, I stay in my home, I don't leave my home, or whatever. But in the digital world, we have to manage privacy through settings and we don't know what they are, and they're, it's just a kind of a mess. Big burden on us to do it. It's not the default. And we talk about default settings, right? Privacy is not the default. Privacy can be the default in the physical world. Another difference is that there's a massive legal burden for everything on the internet. You have to create a legal binding for every service that you're going to use virtually. And customer care has gotten very much DIY and non-human chatbots. So to characterize this Me2B relationship in the digital world, what is it? It's this deliberate relationship I have with a business as experienced through multiple touch points. And so what's interesting about this at a high level is the touch points have increased. So I'm having interaction with the business, directly with the business, establishing a legal agreement, right? That's directly with the business, the legal entity. Customer care is usually directly with the business. It's a business level experience. But at the same time, I have a whole new set of touch points that are embodied through what these connected products and services, right? The brand website, the brand app, the product, the IoT thing that I'm using. So this culmination of all of these touch points, really, that's informing my sense of the me-to-be relationship that I'm having. So it's a layered relationship, very layered, in fact, in the digital world. And first and foremost, it is a legal agreement. So here's the Microsoft agreement. It's a legal agreement. And this, I'm not picking on Microsoft by showing this is very typical, right? We encounter a lot of these. But I will say, that this is, take careful note of this. This is a contract of adhesion. And what that means is, if you look at the second sentence here, you accept these terms by creating an account, just by using the service or continuing to use the service after we notify you that we've changed this whole big thing. By the way, check out the list of stuff here. So we've changed something in here in this, voluminous collection of legalese. And just by logging in and using it, you continue to agree to these terms. That's called a contract of adhesion. Customer care has changed, as I mentioned, right? It's all DIY. Here's a few things you can take care of on your own. All right. And you can start chatting now. And if the bot doesn't fix it, we'll send you to an actual human. And if you actually need a human, don't call us. We'll call you. So on one hand, we've got more accessible interaction with the bee than before the internet, right? It's more accessible. I'm just checking to make sure no messages are coming in that I've lost audio or something. But on the other hand, the legal burden is frankly obscene, right? It's unmanageable. On top of that, the internet has changed everything. So things used to be sort of private and purpose-built. But with connected computing, things are now capable of regular two-way interaction and observation, right? Very different. And in fact, this ongoing, some of these things we use multiple times a day. We're using 24/7. We have very intimate relationships with these things, kind of like the relationships we have with people, right? So we're going to call these Me2P for Me2 product relationships. So again, think back to the rules of engagement and start thinking about, how do these things uphold the rules of engagement? That's really what we're getting at with all of this stuff. So another way to think about these things is that they are digital brand agents. Just like when you're in the store and the salesperson is an agent of the store, these connected things with this two-way communication interaction capability, they are agents of the brand. They're representatives. They're embodiments of the values, the business model, the ethics of the business that built the thing. They're agents. So it's, they're not human, but they're animated in a way through software and through this ability for real-time two-way transaction. So we've got Me2B. We've got Me2P. It's complicated. And it's going to get a little bit more complicated because there's a lot more even going on than just that. So this Me2B relationship is layered. So here's an example. So this is Alice. Alice has just bought an iPhone and she's unboxing it and she's configuring it, setting it up for the first time. Well, the first thing she does is she agrees to the terms of service and she has a legal relationship with Apple Inc., a Me2B, directly with the B, legal relationship with Apple Inc. Then she starts to use this phone, and on an experiential level, she's having a Me2P experiential relationship with her phone, right? We grow feelings about these Me2P things that we use. We love them, we hate them. We have sometimes strong emotions about this relationship. But there's more here. So in this phone, there's a variety of B2B hidden affiliates that Apple has integrated into the device. We're calling these B2B hidden affiliates. This is the third-party integrations and software suppliers that you don't know who they are. You're interacting with this thing. Your information and who knows what else could be being shared with a host of people. And if you've seen a recent GDPR cookie notice, you've seen that they've started to add, by mandate, all of the vendors, all of the third parties involved in the product. And that is horrifying because they're very, very long lists. But these are like sort of the hidden party guests, right? They're there. You don't know you're interacting with them, kind of, but you don't really know it. Okay, so this isn't really that complicated, but let's keep going with this example. So she's using her phone. She decides she wants to install the Chrome browser because she likes it better. So she installs the Chrome browser, and the first thing she does, of course, is accepts the terms of service or terms of use with Google Inc., and she's got a legal relationship with Google Inc. She is also, at the same time, having an experiential relationship with the Chrome browser. And that's her Me2P relationship. Note that the phone itself, the iPhone, has become a technology enabler. It's not the focus of her attention right now. She's using it, but it's not really at the forefront of her attention. What the forefront of her attention and who she's interacting with is the Chrome browser. So we're calling this technology enabler a Me2T technology enabler. It's sort of beyond the awareness, if you will. You're not really centered on that. So what's happening with the hidden party guest? Well, now we've got the B2B hidden affiliates from Google, all of their third-party integrations, and whatever is still monitoring from the device, the native device, Apple's hidden party guest. So the hidden affiliates here accumulate over time. Okay, but it doesn't stop here, right? She's using the browser, and she decides she wants to start an Instagram account. Okay, terrific. The first thing she does is establish a legal relationship with Instagram, right? Oh no, that's actually Facebook. And this is, again, who's the B? Here's the login for creating an Instagram account. Can you even tell where Facebook is? Oh yeah, it's down here in the corner in gray, teeny tiny in gray. So it's hard to know who that legal relationship is. She's using Instagram. She starts to have an experiential relationship with the Instagram website. The browser is no longer in the forefront of her attention. So she's having her relationship is with the Me2P, with Instagram. And the party list over here, the hidden affiliates, has grown to whoever Facebook and Instagram have loaded onto that site, whatever Chrome's got going on, and whatever the native device has going on. So this is what I mean when I say it's complicated. And businesses are celebrating this confusion. This has come up, really. Maybe you've seen it.
Is it the new Buick? I think you mean the new Alexa. It's the Buick. It's an Alexa. Check it out. Alexa, turn on the outdoor lights. Okay, that's cool, but I'm pretty sure it's a Buick. Clearly an Alexa. Alexa, get directions to the 818 Grill. Getting directions. That's the Buick. First ever Buick Encore GX. Available with Alexa built in. Nice Buick. So Alexa, now get nearly $3,300 purchase cash.
Okay.
2020 on.
So I'm sort of astonished that Buick let that commercial happen, but that it's like, okay, that's exactly the confusion. That's exactly the confusion, and it's only going to get worse from here, folks. It really is. So we need to have the vocabulary to be able to navigate our way through this in a way that makes sense. It's crucial for us to make sense of it and to apply the social norms to the technology that we're experiencing. So when we say Me2B and we talk about this Me2B ethos, we're really shorthanding all of these layered relationships and touch points. Why? Because all of the touch points should be respectful. All of them. All the time. All right, so I want to dig into this relationship life cycle, how it happens over time. I'm going to whip through this pretty quickly because we're going to get a little bit short on time. So again, we're taking a page out of psychology. This is a model from George Levinger, a psychology professor at University of Massachusetts. It's the ABCDE human relationship model. It's just a model to kind of show the arc of how relationships develop. If we look at this and apply this to the Me2B relationship in the physical world, it kind of looks like this. I go to a place, I check it out, I like it, I perform a transaction, I buy something, and I keep going back. I become loyal. I go back all the time. So then something changes with me or with them, and I stop going so much, and eventually I don't go there anymore at all. In the digital world, it's similar. I want to do something online, so I poke around, I explore, I try it, I play with it. Then I create an account and I regularly use it. I use it all the time. And then for whatever reason, something happens, something changes with me, something changes with them, and I start to use it less, and eventually I don't use it at all. So we realize that this is not a perfect model, that the reality is much more complicated, and that often I will terminate and go back and restart again and resume. This is just a way for us to think about how do we apply the social norms to these digital Me2B relationships. So the digital Me2B relationship doesn't begin until the individual establishes an account. That's here. It starts here, it ends here. That's when experientially the relationship ends. And by creating an account, I'm saying, I want to be remembered, recognized, and responded to by the product when I'm logged in. And this comes directly out of Joe Andrews' Functional Identity Primer, a very good resource if you haven't read it. But this is what we're saying at that point. And the ceremony of agreeing to the terms of service or terms of use marks the beginning of the Me2B relationship. And it is a legal contract, right? That when you click through that thing because it's annoying and you just want to get on with it, you have signed and entered a legal contract. So in the context of this relationship arc, this light gray part here is the Me2B relationship. I sign up for the account here and I interact with this service when I'm logged in. I'm remembered, recognized, and responded to. Outside of this Me2B relationship, we call it the no Me2B relationship. So that's either before or after, and sometimes during, which we'll get to in a minute. But this no Me2B relationship state reflects the window shopping state in the physical world. And when we're window shopping in the physical world, when you go to a store for the first time, you do not expect to be called by name. That would be a creepy experience, right? It's not okay. So when I'm not in a Me2B relationship online, I have a reasonable expectation of anonymity. And this relates, to a huge extent to respectful default behavior. Anonymity must be the default behavior. So I want to just show you a bit of sort of design fiction here. Well, what if the digital world was really more this idealized Me2B world? And I'm anonymous until I say otherwise, and I can transact without being forced into a Me2B relationship. And I decide when to start the Me2B relationship. And I can report problems with impunity, and I can easily solve problems, and I can get to a person when I need to get to a person. And I can end the relationship. And what about this? What if when I end a relationship, I automatically get a copy of all of my history and data and am forgotten by the service? And if I want to resume, I've got the file. I'll give it back to you. Wouldn't that be awesome? I'm in charge. So that's a little image of how the idealized version of that life cycle could go. So characteristics of Me2B relationships in the digital world: layered, complicated, longitudinal, regular interactions. They might not be daily. Some are daily. Some are multiple times a day. It is the state of being remembered, recognized, and responded to. It's a legal agreement agreement, and we have many, many of these. Okay, we're going to shift over now to the Me2B deal. What is the Me2B deal? In essence, and this applies physical world or digital world, it is fair value given for fair value received. This is how we work in the real world. We know when we're not getting fair value given for fair value received. And we don't like to feel like we got taken advantage of. We don't like it. It doesn't feel good. And at the same time, we also know that if we're getting something for nothing, our antennae go up, right? We're going to talk more about that in a second. Again, the internet has changed everything. And in the internet, this freemium business model really is kind of the pumping heart of surveillance capitalism. Freemium. There's a free experience and there's maybe a premium experience, or maybe it's all free. I'm using freemium to reflect both of those. And the thing we have to remember is Tanstaffel. There ain't no such thing as a free lunch. Again, we know this viscerally in the physical world. Someone gives you something and you're like, uh-oh, what strings are attached here? So we need to know, what have I given for the value received in the digital world? Because Tanstaffel. Now, lest you think I hate free, I do not. And we have a long, rich tradition of product subsidization in print media, broadcast media, and not just the internet here, but phones. Mobile phones themselves were subsidized. We were locked into 2-year contracts back in the day, but you got the phone for free. Printers, you get a subsidized price on the printer because of the ink, which comes out of, the old razor and blade business model. Give away the razor, get the blades for free. So something has happened, interestingly, about currency over the years because of the internet. So we have multiple currencies. We're familiar with buying things. I give you a stack of money, I get a thing. That's what we know. That's the physical world, right? A stack of money or a proxy for a stack of money, a credit card, something, but I get a thing in exchange. Well, with media, we started to pay with time and attention through advertising, right? That we're paying with our time and attention. And then on the internet, doing things in the digital world, we've brought the advertising model with us, so we're paying with time and attention, but we're also paying with that surplus behavioral information. And that's the piece that starts to feel funny. We have volition over the time and attention. We don't have volition over the scraping and collecting of behavioral information. So that's where it starts to feel funny. And in the digital world, we do use all 3 types of currency, right? We transact with all 3 types of currency, whether we know it or not. Free isn't without cost. And in fact, we are paying these things. One we know, one we don't understand fully. And the Me2B ethos says, you deserve to know what you're paying for free. You deserve to know. So when we talk about Me2B deals, there's 2 types of Me2B deals. There's a one-off transaction, and then there's a relationship deal. And I'm going to whip through this a little bit quickly. The one-off transaction is pretty simple. I want to purchase something or do something. I'll give you X, you'll give me Y, and then we go our separate ways, never to be seen again, perhaps. It can happen anywhere. But here's an example, and I'm using the $ to represent any kind of currency. It could be any of the 3 types of currency. But you know what it is, and you're making that transaction. So there's another kind of deal called the Me2B relationship deal. This is setting up the terms of the relationship. This is when you say, I want to be remembered, recognized, and responded to by this product, and I understand that I'm going to be giving you X, or I'm going to be watching ads, or whatever, and I'm going to receive Y in exchange. That's how it should go, right? It's when we create the account, and we agree to the terms of service. And this relationship deal can and does change over time. Right now, we don't have any controls to change it, but the business changes it by changing their terms of service all the time. And again, we're agreeing to it just by using. So that's how we experience it today. We'd like to change this to give people more agency over setting up this deal, maintaining this deal over the life of the relationship, frankly. So the Me2B relationship happens here when I sign up for the account. That's the relationship deal. That's when we sign the contract. In theory, I've read the terms of service. In practice, it would take you 76 days a year to read all the terms of service. And that's probably not accounting for all the updates. So one interesting note here is in the Me2B ethos is even if you have a Me2B relationship with a service, you should be able to still be anonymous when you want to be anonymous. It's just part of the principles of agency. You should be able to perform a transaction outside of the relationship. All of this Me2B relationship setting up is done today through notice and consent, or notice and choice is the legal framework for it. You are given notice and you consent. And this consent in principle does not align with the Me2B ethos. Consent as a legal mechanism favors the consent seeker because the consent seeker is setting up the choices that you, the consentee, get to choose from. Can I poke you in the eye or punch you in the shoulder? Neither? Thanks. So consent does not align with the principles of agency in the Me2B ethos. What does align is user-asserted preferences and permissions and negotiating the terms of service. So we all know what the Me2B relationship deal problems are today. We have no idea what we're giving. We don't know who we're giving it to. We don't know how it's being monetized, and we don't really have a choice in the matter. So it is very far from the ideal of the Me2B deal ethos. Okay, so Me2B tools. So again, quick reminder of the Me2B core principles. These are great, right? It'd be great. The design fiction that I laid out, that's pretty cool if we could have this kind of agency and control and respect. But the average person globally has about 38 online accounts. This was from LastPass earlier this year. The average business person has, according to LastPass in 2017, 191 online accounts. I have over 550, and I'm guessing I'm not alone. We have a lot of these relationships, a lot. So we're going to need some help with this. We need tools to make Me2B a reality. And this is something that Doc Searls has been saying for a long time in his Project VRM work. And I'm just jumping on the bandwagon with this. We need Me2B tools and services. And Project VRM, Doc calls them fourth party tools. They've also been referred to as trust mediaries. These are tools that will make Me2B relationship management easy, effortless, really effortless. It needs to be. They're trusted agents that work on my behalf, and therefore they must be held to higher legal obligations. We must hold them to a duty of loyalty. So there's new kinds of trusted agents that we need. We need Me2B relationship managers. We need digital wallets. We need personal data stores. And perhaps we need to be thinking about bring your own everything. And this is tricky because bring your own means a lot of like, ooh, that sounds like work, right? But it also means choice, right? It means agency and choice. So bring your own identity. This is self-sovereign identity. This work is well developed and fairly mature, and it's emerging. Bring your own information use permissions. We're working on this in IEEE 7012. Bring your own profiles. You know what? I'll manage my profiles, thanks. And if you want my political profile, you ask me for it. And if I trust you and like you, I'll give it to you. And that'd be great. Bring your own social graph. We've been managing our own social graph forever. That's our address book. How about I maintain that? And I'll bring it with me when I use your social network, and I'll take it with me when I go. And maybe even bring your own AI. And this is something I've been starting to think about recently is architecturally speaking, all of the services are centralized by these many companies, centralized loosely because there's scores of them, right? And you have all these relationships and they all have their own AI, right? But what if we move to personalization architecturally to the edge where people can have some agency over it? One other quick word about the Me2B tools is that there's sort of broad tools and deep tools that we need to be mindful of. The broad tools like browser and app stores, these have a lot of information about us because they're broad. They're developing very rich profiles of us. They need to be held to a higher level of duty. We need to reinforce these kinds of relationships. There's different kinds of relationships, really, with these. There are different kinds of Me2B relationships online. And then there are deep tools like medical apps and services that we use and financial apps and services. Those also should be held to a different kind of standard. So we need to, I guess the point here is that Me2B relationships are contextual, and the level of duty needs to be proportional. It's not one size fits all. Okay. Wow. With all of the little hiccups and stuff, I've actually made it to the summarizing part. I hope it wasn't too much of a speed test for you all. I hope it was okay. So I'm just going to recap some of the key points here. So we've introduced a lot of language, right? Me2B relationships and the layering of Me2B relationships, where we have a Me2B legal relationship. We have the Me2P, Me2 product, experiential relationship. And these are really little brand agents. I was struggling about what to call these. Do we call them brand bots, digital brand bots, or digital brand agents, digital brand children? But we should think about them like that because we're having a real experiential relationship with technology. We have Me2T, Me2 technology enabler relationships. It's a stacking of technology that happens. And then, of course, we have all the B2B hidden affiliates that are these invisible forced relationships that also accumulate with that stacked technology. And we have the idea of the Me2B relationship lifecycle over time and how it ebbs and flows and how we should be able to have agency over that lifecycle. And then we talked about Me2B deals and that there is a one-off deal and a Me2B relationship deal. And then, of course, we talked about the Me2B tools. So the key points leaving this webinar today are Me2B is an ethical foundation, and it's really derived from healthy human relationship principles and thinking hard and deep about physical world norms and adapting and translating those for the digital world. Me2B relationships are profoundly different in the digital world. We have more touch points because we're dealing with these digital brand agents. We have stacked technology enablers. We have stacked observers. We have touch points we're not touching, you know? This is really kind of a cornerstone problem in the digital world of the Me2B relationships. Me2B insists on respect in all of the touch points of Me2B relationships and going back to the rules of engagement. An important thing, too, is to think about the Me2B ethos has these two states of experiencing technology. When you're in the relationship, the Me2B relationship, and when you're not. And that when you're not in a Me2B relationship, you have a reasonable expectation of anonymity. And technologically speaking, we should have privacy by default. Privacy by default is there's really no excuse that we don't have privacy by default. And the key maxims of the Me2B ethos are that respectful Me2B relationships benefit both Me's and B's. They're better for both. Respectful Me2B relationships are about more than just privacy. As you can see, this wasn't just about privacy. It's about agency and it's about respect, right? It's about how you're being treated, not just by the human agents of the company, but by the technical agents of the company as well. And I can't say this enough, so I added it here again. Anonymity must be a default. Anonymity must be a default. And also another key part of the ethos is permissions versus consent. This is really what we're interested in enabling as a part of the Me2B ethos. Another key thing to keep in mind is Tunstall. Ain't no such thing as a free lunch. This applies in the digital world. We need to have more rigor around this and more ways to know what we're paying for free. Respectful Me2B relationships require new tools. It's plain and simple. You couldn't do this, right? You can't manage it as it is today manually by reading terms of service and setting up all your privacy settings. You simply can't. You don't have the time. So you need new tools, and you also need new legal obligations. So to summarize it in one sort of sentiment, Me2B is really human rights and consumer rights for the digital world. And that's the one key takeaway. So as you go about using technology, think about your relationships. Think about if technology is treating you respectfully. So thank you all for coming today, and sorry for the few little hiccups that we had in the beginning. I hope it has been okay despite that. And again, if you have questions, because we only have a minute here to hear, my email address is lisa.lavasser@me2balliance.org, and we'll publish this deck on our website and the recording. And just a quick blurb, we will have another webinar in 2 weeks given by Ian Henderson, where we're going to start to dig deeper into this Me2B life cycle, Me2B relationship life cycle. And we're going to start from the customer supplier engagement model. Excuse me. And that will be in 2 weeks at the same time. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to look at the questions that are in the chat. And I hope that this was good for you. No questions. Wow. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. I'm going to give you 1 minute to back to your life. Thank you again for joining us. Bye-bye.